The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome to Index Engine's webinar, Manage Costs and Risks with Defensible Deletion. Today's webinar will be hosted by Jim McGann, Vice President of Marketing at Index Engine. Please type any questions for Jim in the question area on the right of the screen, and he will answer them at the end of the webinar. So let's begin. Jim?
Thanks, Jen. Thanks for joining today's session. Today's session should go about 45 minutes or so, may go a little longer. I plan to do a few short demonstrations of the product, but mainly go through a number of slides talking about defensible deletion as a strategy to really help manage information and control liability. Again, my name is Jim McGann. I'm Vice President of Marketing here at Index Engines. If you do have questions, you'll see a question or a chat area on the right side of your screen. You can type those, type in the questions, and we'll try to take them towards the end. If I can take them during the session, I'll do that as well. Otherwise, my email address is there. I'm happy to take questions one-on-one through email. Okay, let's get started. Short intro on Index Engines for those of you that are not familiar with us. We are an information management software solution company that provides information management and archiving technology. Mainly the use cases are supporting compliance and litigation, but lots of other applications out there. Some of the key capabilities of Index Engines is that as an indexing platform, we provide detailed knowledge of all data assets. One of the unique advantages is we provide knowledge of not only your current data, the data that's on servers, desktops, networks, but also legacy data that's on old legacy backup tapes. Is one of the unique advantages of Index Engines, which I'll talk about today. It's a very efficient platform, very high speed, can integrate into current infrastructure very quickly, allows you to apply policy to user data. So we added a layer of intelligence on top of storage, enterprise storage, to be able to act on it and apply policy and support legal hold, regulatory requirements, and preservation requirements on data. So as all you know, the enterprise data environment is very complex. I mean, significant volumes of data. I mean, the storage market has been growing exponentially over years. So there's large volumes of user data that has been stored. I'm really speaking about the user files in email versus structured databases. So it's really the loose files that are unmanaged. However, there is data that's locked in proprietary repositories like email. Email Exchange, Lotus Notes is a proprietary repository that contains large volumes of valuable user data. Backup is also another proprietary repository. Backup formats from Symantec, from IBM, from EMC are proprietary containers that store large volumes of data. So email backup, the scale of data adds to the complexity of the content. Everything's saved. I mean, we talk to customers all the time that have been saving data for 10, 20 plus years. As long as electronic data has been around, they've been saving it. IT has really been instructed. I mean, their marching orders for the technology department has to make data available. So for disaster recovery and business continuity programs, it's really about making sure the data is available in case of any kind of failure. And what they do in that case is they copy it, and preserve it. And data is really not purged. Users have a lot of power. I mean, we talk to a lot of companies that really give users complete access to their data to be able to make copies of it in remote servers. One of the key things that causes a lot of pain in companies is letting users create desktop PSTs, which are really mini archives of their email, storing it on their desktop, storing it on remote locations, including USB drives. So it's really the fact that users have power to be able to create those kind of repositories creates a lot of complexity in terms of finding data and managing data. And in general, there's lack of knowledge. There's lack of general knowledge of the content. So as the volume and the complexity increase, it's very difficult to understand what you have. Even more complex is as data ages. So as it ages and kind of, disappears into the background, whether it's in backup formats or just in servers on networks, it becomes difficult to find and manage. I mean, there's really no master directory of the content. So as you all know, in your corporate environment, it's very difficult to understand and manage data because of these issues. So if I really simplify it, and this is taking a simplistic approach of the corporate environment, think about desktops. I mean, user files and documents are stored here on their hard drives. One of the things that we hear over and over again from customers is PSTs. Users are creating PST archives, which are stored on desktops. So, that's one of the key challenges of the user desktop environment. Looking at corporate servers, so servers are scattered throughout the enterprise. IT is continually increasing the capacity of servers. I mean, servers are, it's pretty cheap to store data. So adding servers is not is a very common task. Users basically share and archive data on these environments. Email server, break that out separately. It's really the corporate communication hub, where all the valuable information is shared. It's really the home of the most sensitive data. There's no easy to manage this dynamic environment. A lot of people are putting in email archives to solve this problem, which we'll talk about. And backup, which is typically neglected. I mean, backup environments, all the data is copied there, continually for business continuity purposes. So, backup really is a snapshot, a constant snapshot on a daily, weekly, monthly basis of all user data and content. Data is acceptable and no longer burdensome. Many companies have used the burdensome argument over time, saying it's too expensive to get access to. We're not going to go back to backup for legal compliance purposes whatsoever. But those arguments are failing. I mean, the burdensome argument is really eroding because technology such as index engines here is making that data accessible. And if it's accessible for the courts, it really needs to be managed according to your records management or information governance strategies. So if you look at those four buckets, we're going to talk about those in more detail. And we're going to talk about defensible deletion. So the volume of the data, the locations of the data make it complex, but in a defensible deletion strategy, which we're definitely discussing today, a significant portion of user data is really not required for long-term retention. So it's your everyday working documents, email correspondence, which could include spam and privilege data. So it's really the stuff that has no business value that really isn't required. And as the data ages, you get to those 90% numbers. I mean, obviously the data that's created today is more valuable versus data that was created 10 years ago. So, when we do projects like this, especially working with legacy content that's old, very old, you see 90% or more of that content being purged. So really understanding enough about the data, profiling the data, doing data mapping, which we'll talk about again today as well, enough to separate and classify the content is key. So, keywords define intellectual property. So if you're a manufacturing organization, pharmaceutical company, even financial services, there's a lot of intellectual property contained in that content to be able to find, say, manufacturing documents and sensitive content, maybe manufacturing documents related to a product that has a class action suit against it, for example. Metadata knowledge such as date ranges, owners, locations are critical to be able to narrow down content. So in other words, I want to find all PST files, or I want to find Excel spreadsheets owned by specific custodians or users, and so on. A defensible deletion also involves creating and updating policies and preservation requirements. So understanding your regulatory and compliance requirements, which is a complex world that the legal and your compliance and regulatory folks live in. And then also understand active litigation obligations. So for existing lawsuits that are taking place, what custodians or users are on legal hold and preservation. And then applying the policy. So being able to take action on it, copy the responsive data to an archive and apply retention periods to it. Purge what is no longer required after an appropriate time frame. And if you think about, electronic data, and it's been around for 10, 20 or so more years, there's no way that a company can survive just continuing to hoard and archive that data. It's just going to pile up and pile up and pile up. There's no real reason to keep it. It's, after 20 or so years, you got to start, do a little bit of house cleaning and manage that liability of that content. So in terms of an archiving strategy, if you think about all the different, environments, from the desktops all the way to, legacy backup tapes that are sitting, possibly in an offsite vault. An enterprise index, could layer on top of these different environments, from desktops, servers, email, even backup tapes, to really understand the content so you can apply policy. So without understanding what you have, you really, it's a difficult challenge to be able to develop comprehensive policies and strategies and playbooks in order to take action on it. And we talk to customers every day that are kind of stuck in this analysis paralysis mode where they just really don't know where to get started. And the big challenge is always they don't understand what they have. I mean, we hear we want to get rid of data, we just don't know what data and where to begin. We want to manage data more effectively. Again, we just don't know what exists and where it is. So the enterprise index is really a layer that sits on top of your existing storage infrastructure that gives you that knowledge and that power to be able to make those decisions. And it really relieves a lot of our customers from that analysis paralysis that I mentioned in order to take action. So, layering that, creating that enterprise index allows you to execute a intelligent policy across the data. So, it's an actionable index that allows you to apply the policy and take appropriate action and really filter it down to what needs to be legally held and preserved and archived for a specific period of time. So it's really going through, that typical funnel of, everything that's on the current production networks and even in the legacy archives to what really needs to be held and preserved. And your legal and compliance teams are very familiar with that. And again, we also talk to customers that are kind of in a mode of, we save everything. We hear things like, SOX compliance requires we save everything. I mean, it really doesn't. It doesn't require you to save every copy of every email, every copy of every file. It really has specific regulatory requirements that can be executed. And saving everything is really not a strategy. It's kind of lack of a strategy. So we do work with customers on, really the data mapping process and to be able to help them develop those policies and kind of fine-tune them. So if you look at those different four areas, what our recommendation really is to control what's on the desktop. So users having the power to store data, and your typical desktops today can store over a terabyte of files. I mean, terabyte of Word documents is a ridiculous volume of data. And they can also store PSTs typically, and PSTs are mini archives of email, which are difficult to manage. So really controlling what's saved on the desktop, and we've seen the extreme of our customers doing desktops without hard drives, so the very thin clients that are accessing or storing their data at a remote central server that's much easier to manage. We also see clients that are eliminating the ability to create and store PSTs on desktops as well. So, eliminate the problem there by controlling what users can and cannot do on their desktop. On the server side, apply ongoing policy to data as it ages. So some of the things that clients do on their servers is end up leaving data, significant data from employees that are no longer with the company. So you have people that have left the organization years ago, and their data just sits there on the servers, and no one's managing it. So as data ages, and if you can apply policy to it, that data can be purged and controlled and managed over time. Defensible deletion also talks about applying policy to email and not keeping old email forever, purging old email according to retention periods. And the most important part is remediating legacy content. So if you think about all the data that's in your legacy backup tapes, we have customers that have millions of tapes or tens or hundreds of thousands of tapes that are really, again, snapshots of their corporate network environment for many, many years. Remediating that legacy content, it's not going anywhere. So, proactively remediating it in order to, control the liability and control the expense of that content is really an important key strategy for defensible deletion. So let's talk about data mapping. Data mapping is becoming a popular topic these days. Data mapping, data classification, data assessment, all common terms used in this area. But it's really data mapping in the scope of helping develop policy. So, obviously organizations have thousands of servers, desktops, and so on. It's a dynamic, continually changing environment, significant volumes of data, very complex to understand. So building a policy without really detailed knowledge and profiling of that content is very, very difficult to do. No clear understanding of the liability, what exists out there. I've heard it described as, a lot of that content is kind of Pandora's box for us. We know there's some bad stuff out there. We just don't know where it is, or we just want to keep it hidden away because otherwise we have to address it. As users change jobs or leave the company, the knowledge is lost of the infrastructure. So if you've got IT organizations that are managing servers and networks, even email, as they leave or change jobs, what data existed on those servers and what versions existed, it becomes lost. And again, as data ages, it becomes very difficult to access. I mean, you've probably got user files and documents that have been sitting on your network for 15 years or so, and no one has any idea who used to own it, what it contains, is it of value, and so on. So, as it ages throughout the network, again, it becomes more complex. So data mapping is a valuable tool. So it's really layering an index on top of the content. So the index will provide detailed knowledge of the content and the metadata. So it also includes, it can be layered on top of your legacy content, again, through the backup tapes as well. So data mapping that content, from your data that's being created today to the data that was created 10, 15, or more years ago is critical to be able to profile that content. So once you index that content, you can summarize and classify it, generate reports, by owner, location, age, and so on. And I'll show you a quick demo of how we can help here. Determine sensitive locations. So depending on the type of organization you are, is your finance and legal department sensitive? Is your R&D department more sensitive? Manufacturing more sensitive? Engineering, and so on. So where the sensitive content resides on what servers and what type of data it is, what type of liability it could present. And using this information to develop the playbook. What's the course of action? What to attack first? And again, when people think about information governance or, proactive litigation readiness, it becomes a big challenge. But if you break it down and figure out where you need, where's the most sensitive data, pick off projects that you can imagine that you can achieve and knock off initially, and focus on those. And really, cleaning up legacy content is some good house cleaning activity, and I'll talk about how we make that significantly easier. Implementing ongoing process to manage new data. Again, processes where you get users not giving them control to create PSTs on desktops and so on. And then most important of all, make sure you have counsel, outside counsel, or advisors to sign off on the process to ensure defensibility and give you the confidence that your defensible deletion process will stand up if ever you need to defend it in courts. So indexing enterprise data, I mean, indexing sounds like a complex task. I mean, a lot of people think of indexing as, simple search, but indexing is going to give you the knowledge of these different repositories, from your desktop environment all the way down to your legacy tapes, give you that knowledge here of detailed metadata like, creation time or access time. Let's look at access time. So, show me all the user data that hasn't been accessed in 5 years. I want to move that to a different tier of storage, which could be a cloud environment, which is maybe less expensive. Show me the author of the content, and I can compare that to the ex-employees and find how much data we're storing from ex-employees and what content can be purged out. So a lot of these metadata parameters are very useful in developing policy and developing the action plan. Reports, I'll show you that in a minute in the demonstration. Dynamic reports are really important. You want to do summaries and roll-ups of the content. So you want to find reports on specific custodians or users, where they stored spreadsheets, other users who have data on that server, what's been accessed for the past 90 days, and so on. So I'll show you some sample of some scenarios there as we go into the demo. But a lot of our customers are doing user-based mapping, so being able to profile specific departments. So if, say, for example, you're looking at your finance department, you've got 5 users that are of interest, you can import a list of custodians into the index and say, okay, I've got these 5 users that are have sensitive data or some legal issues, legal preservation requirements. So I can import that in, generate a report of where their data is. So, you know, a lot of companies get surprised by, you know, we think that they store most of their data on their desktop and maybe a shared departmental server where they find that it's on servers that they wouldn't expect that users have placed. It's also on your legacy backup tapes. You know, obviously, you know, IT's been grabbing that data and putting it onto tape for years. So it's really scattered about and not always where you think it would be. And then you can start to profile it. Look at the type of the data, the age of the data, email exchange, frequency of communication, hidden data. You quickly find PSTs where they're located, and shared and duplicate content. So the index provides significant value in terms of doing storage assessments to save, you know, and optimize your storage environment. But it also allows you to build comprehensive policies from a legal and compliance or regulatory point of view. So let's take a little bit of a peek into some data mapping. And I'm going to jump out a bit and bring up the product itself. So this is the interface to Index Engines itself. So I've run a index across quite a few different locations. So if I select my Locations tab, you would see here these are the different servers that are out in the network that were indexed in our lab here. You can see one of them here. This is an actual email server. There's a few email servers on there. And others are just your standard, this could be a desktop or specific, yes, it's a desktop or, you know, large corporate enterprise class servers. So you can see down here are some enterprise class servers. So, you know, large volume of data could be indexed and so on. So if I look at the, you know, queries that I could build, or the reports actually, you know, I could look at a report by owner. So, I mean, I index all that data. Who owns the content? Who are the users? So if I switch over, you can see a whole list of different users here. You know, Robert Thornton, Carol Schwartz, John Doe, and so on. So if I have specific legal requirements or want to drill down into that, what I could do is I can select a series of users. So if I go in here and I select, you know, users that are of interest, and you can see my query building here on the left. As I do that, you can see I've narrowed it down to 5 or 6 different users, and I can go in here and hit search, and you'll see what it'll do is it'll filter that down to those users. So the nice thing about that is the reports can be dynamic, as you can kind of drill down and do some kind of investigation or some early case assessment or analysis of the data. And what I'm doing is kind of just doing more of a custodian or user-based search parameters. I mean, we definitely have filtering on top, you know, by content, so you can do keyword search, which I'll show you in a little bit, file properties, email properties, and so on. Let's go back here. So here I filtered it down to just those specific users. What I want to do is switch over to file type. So what kind of files do these people own? So you can see here that 54% of the data that they own are PST email messages. So we have a big concern about PSTs and want to really manage them more effectively. So if I unselect this and then just go back in and select just the PSTs here and hit search, so I've filtered everything out except for just the PSTs. I've narrowed down, so I basically have a search that says, you know, for these specific users, find where their PST messages are, and I can go in here and look at a host and see that, you know, 99% are on this specific host. So I've narrowed it down. They're not as scattered about as I was hoping. So I could also go and look at the specific results, and I'll show a little bit more about the results here in a bit. But let me go, and I have a query that I've saved here that I'm going to load and search, which in this case is going to show all the actual PSTs. So you can see here, these are actual PST files. This is where the files are located. I can select all of them and download a report. This I'll show you in a CSV, or in this case I'll bring it up in Excel so you can see it, where all the PSTs are located. So you can see here the path of all those PSTs. And you can upload this and manage this data and even go out and delete these PSTs as required. Here you can see the file name for those and so on. One of the other reports that's definitely helpful here is you may be interested in how have these PSTs been accessed. So if I go in here, and here you can see, let me look at the owners. So here you can see who specifically owns those PSTs. I can go in and say, when were they last modified? So you can see some of these PSTs haven't been modified in 5 years, 28% of them. So helpful information. You can even go in and say these PSTs, when were they last accessed? So most of them were accessed actually less than a year ago. So you can get a good idea of profiling the data and seeing, is it being used in the network? Where is it? Who owns it? So the reports are really helpful, taking large volumes of data. This could be millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, billions of files, and summarizing and profiling the content to be able to make decisions about it and build policies. So data mapping for us is really about the the index, understanding what exists, and building sound strategies around it. And a lot of the traditional data mapping has been around interviews, which still has significant value. You're going to get some more value-added information about it. But in the case of where we can use indexing is very valuable to get really detailed technical information about the content. So that's data mapping. Let's go back into defensible deletion and back into our our different data sources. And the vault here is obviously the legacy backup tapes. So what am I going to do for legacy backup tapes? I mean, the recommendation there is really to remediate that content. So we have customers that, again, have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of tapes, and they're not going anywhere. So remediation of that content is really one of the strategies that we recommend here. So tapes really are complete snapshots of all your corporate data for decades. And every time that we process tapes with customers, they're pretty surprised what they see on there. I mean, it's a lot of sensitive content that shouldn't be on tapes. It's your CEO's email since the beginning of time. It's sensitive customer records, credit reports, again, PSTs, and so on. IT is continuing to make these tapes because they don't know what to save and what to archive. So, I mean, backup tapes are a snapshot for disaster recovery and then end up getting archived for long-term retention just because they can't separate the useful or responsive versus the useless data. And these archiving of tapes creates a major long-term liability. We have customers that are facing serious lawsuits where the data on tape is what's they're being forced to produce that data from tape in order to support the lawsuit. And it may, not that our customers do anything wrong, it's just that data is not going to help them in the long run. So managing that liability proactively is really what we're seeing as a powerful trend here. And there's been lots of precedent and case law out there of fines and sanctions being issued for lack of production of data. I mean, if you look at, you can even search YouTube for Judge Sinlin, who's one of the thought leaders in the space, that says, if you can't produce data from your primary networks, go to your backup tapes, but don't come into my core without producing the data. And there's the groundbreaking case from 2010, which is University of Montreal pension plan, where she stated that she issued sanctions of negligent and grossly negligent lapses in preservation and collection of responsive electronic documents and the failure to identify and preserve sources of potentially responsive evidence such as relevant backup tapes. So judges are talking about backup tapes. Your records management folks and IT folks should be talking about them as well and how to manage them more effectively. So the interesting thing about legacy tape remediation is the return on investment could be pretty dramatic. And if you're storing tapes in offsite storage like Iron Mountain, Recall, other locations, you're paying money to store those tapes, and you're paying money year after year after year to keep those tapes safe and secure so they won't erode, which is kind of probably counter to really what you want to happen. But if you have this is a sample of a client that had 14,000 legacy backup tapes, and again, what you're spending on tape storage may differ, and some customers may be spending, significantly more than others. It really depends on your relationship with your offsite storage vendor. But if you look here, what Index Engines provides is really direct indexing of the tape content. So you don't need the original infrastructure. You don't need to restore anything off tape. You just need to scan the tape. It'll create that index or that data map of the content and allow you to take action on it. And if you want to grab one individual email off of a tape, you can do that. You can cherry pick what you need. So it really streamlines the process and makes it significantly more efficient in terms of processing the tapes and getting data off tape. So it really makes tape remediation possible. And we've seen in a lot of cases that, this is an important point, that remediation of the tape, bringing index engines technology in-house could be less expensive than your annual storage fee. So if you're spending, in this case, this customer was spending, about $1 million or so a year to store tapes in offsite storage, bringing technology and the labor and the whole platform in place in order to remediate it, their return on investment was less than a year. So you can see that it's, and we're happy to go through this methodology and process with you as well, depending on your environment. But you can see it paid for itself. And if you've got litigation that's forcing you to produce data from tape, that's going to add significant expense as well. That'll make the return on investment even more attractive. So I'm going to jump in and do another little demo here about on tape remediation, and go back into the same system. Let me just clear out the search results. Actually, let me sign out. I want to jump over first to what we call the administrative user interface. So as I mentioned, Index Engines allows direct indexing of the tape. So I'm not going to spend too much time here because this is really more the administrative side. But if I go into my tape processing option here, and I look at tapes, these are tapes that I've loaded into the tape reader. So it's a tape cartridge. And you can see here in the tape slots, slot 1, slot 2, what Index Engines does. In this case, it reads the header of the tape. So the nice thing here is you can look at the headers and say, I'm looking for just my Exchange backups. So Exchange is my email server. So you could find those very, very easily and just say, these are the tapes that are really of interest to me. So we can perform data mapping on legacy tapes and narrow them down very quickly because, if you're storing 50,000 tapes, you'll typically find that more than half of them are really not of interest. They're incremental backups or non-user data, or if email is just of interest, they're just not, they don't contain any email content. So this cataloging phase is very useful in terms of mapping out what's on tape in order to determine what to remediate, and you can quickly remediate a good chunk of them based on this information. So this is all I'm going to show you on the administrative side. If I go back in on the end user side, on the search side, and log in, so you can see, you can see all the different search parameters here on the left. So I can search the tapes, by content, file properties, document properties, and so on. So let me go into file properties and say I'm interested in a file type. So I can go all the way down in and look for different documents. Let's just say I want to find all documents instead of saying Word or WordPerfect. I can do that. And just by hitting search, you'll see over here the result sets appear. So there's some WordPerfect, there's some .docs, there's some .text, and so on, and find documents. I can narrow that down and say I want to find any document that was created from, let's just go back in time, say May 6, 2002 to present, and search on that and filter that down even further. And then I can even search on content, so I'll keyword search and say I want to find documents that contain the keyword confidential, for example, and search. So you see I have a result set of about 2,000 documents. I can look at this too. If I click on it, we bring down below what we call this reconstruction, so I can peek into the document and see the textual content with the keywords highlighted here. So it's not the original document, it's what we call a reconstruction, which allows you to quickly review and see is this responsive or of interest or not. So a quick profile of the data. So say I have these 2,000 or so files I want to get, and these all exist on a backup tape. I want to get that off the tape. You can just select the ones you want. I'll select all of them and just select extract. Just tell the system where you want to extract it to, and it'll rip it off of tape. And I've already done that since I don't have much time today. And if I look in this folder here, you can see if I drill down data that's been extracted, I'll go into this folder here, and you can see all these documents. These are WordPerfect files, And as I call it up, take a chance on one of these. You can see this is the original, the original document that was pulled directly off of a legacy backup tape. So the original formatted document that was pulled. So the idea on with index engines to do intelligent tape processing takes all those legacy tapes that you have, you just scan them, make them searchable, apply policy to it, extract what you need, and then you can purge the rest very quickly. So again, tape remediation is definitely achievable to apply policy to that legacy content. Okay, so again, back to defensible deletion. Let's talk more about email. So in the email server, a lot of companies have put in email archives, others have not yet. Some companies are putting in departmental archives to support legal hold and preservation requests, and we do a lot of projects around there. But indexing the email server to be able to understand what's on there allows you to create a view or a window into that content, and in order to make decisions. So you can apply proactive policy to that data, the email, save users' email according to regulatory compliance requirements. We typically see about 10% of users have some kind of regulatory compliance issues against them. So we have customers that are doing, say, 90-day holds on the email, and what Index Engines is doing is indexing that exchange or notes server and applying, that policy, basically preserving those custodian mailboxes and holding on to them for that 90 days and then releasing that content out. The nice thing about indexing of the email server is you can also support reactive requests. So, reactively you can go in there and query it and say, I want to find, I have a harassment lawsuit against John Doe. I need to secure all that email and put it on hold. Or you have a pending lawsuit, you want to do an early case assessment and analyze that environment. So, indexing this content will allow you to do that and proactively be able to process the data and understand what's there. Email archiving, if you give legal access to the email environment to be able to preserve what they need to preserve, you can also stop archiving those email backup tapes. That's really kind of creates a large liability is just putting all that email on backup tape and holding onto it forever. But you can stop that if you've got an environment that's really holding on to what you need to hold on to, and stop using tape as that archive. And then defensibly purge what you don't need. So one last demonstration. Apologize for the back and forth, but I think I want to make sure that you get a view of the technology. But so here, if you look again, the same interface. So if I was going to search, say I have a request for John Doe's email, I can go in the location and I could go and even simply browse the email server, which is, as I mentioned, is the server here, and browse and see specific user mailboxes. So here I see John Doe. I can go even in more detail the different folders under John Doe's mailbox. So I can go and I can say, I just want to search and find all of John Doe's email. So you can get all the email. You see it here. I can even be more specific and say, I want to find it based on a date range. So I want to find it on a sent date range, and I can go back in time. Let's just go back a couple of years and search on that. So filter it even further. Again, I can put in a keyword here as well. So if I want to go into a content keyword, I'll use confidential again, my favorite keywords, and search. So now, I've got a cold set of 766 emails, small number. Again, I could go in and review it, and see down below, kind of see what we call, again, this reconstruction of the email and where those keywords are used, and so on. And then I can select specific content or all of it, and we have an option here which is a collection option. And collection is what that's going to do is move it from where it is, which could be your email environment, email server, or a replicated copy of your email server, and move it into a archive or a collection for preservation and legal hold. And you can see, if I look at the reports, you can see one of the interesting reports is the collection report, which kind of shows you what's collected versus uncollected. And so you're really using the same view into the data and kind of toggling between what's collected or archived and preserved and what's not collected and archived and preserved. So just a quick demo of that capability. Okay, so we're getting towards our time frame, so I want to wrap up a bit. In terms of defensible deletion, again, the last area, I mean, we talked about your desktops and your legacy tapes, but your online network servers, again, applying ongoing policy to the data as it ages is pretty critical. Use data mapping to find the high-risk servers. I mean, a lot of the servers have data that may be riskier than other servers, so legal, finance, executives, and so on. Focus on those high-risk servers and apply policy. So some of the stuff that our customers are looking at do is, finding files that have not been accessed for 5 or more years. So you can move this to cheaper storage like cloud. I mean, we have customers that have, pushing content out to a cloud environment just because it's much less expensive for them to maintain if it hasn't been accessed for 5 years, or even purging it. Find files owned by ex-employees that have not been accessed for more than a year or 2 years. So, I mean, you can do those iterative type reports and just think of the volume of data from ex-employees you have on there. Some of it may have business value, but some of it may not have been accessed for 5 years. So if it's an ex-employee who hasn't been touched for more than 5 years, get rid of it. So, being able to index network data and apply policy and really move your intellectual property and files required for regulatory compliance purposes to an archive and get rid of the rest is important. But don't over-collect into the archive. We see customers that have put in archives in the past that have kind of collapsed under their own weight because they're just pushing too much data into that archive, and it's not very manageable for a legal hold or preservation request. So if you look at all the different environments from desktops, it's really, the volume of data is relatively low, and it's, medium risk of the content. On network servers, the volume is significantly high, typically lower risk than other content. It really depends on your business. Email server, the volume is low. Email isn't a significant volume compared to other data, but it's high risk. That's some of the highest risk stuff that you'll have. Legacy tapes are interesting because it's high volume and high risk. It's just snapshots of data over time, and it's everything. So it's a very high risk environment. So the key component of what we're talking about today is to be able to provide an indexing layer across all these different environments. And that's really one of the key value propositions of index engines, is to be able to index data that's user data on servers, email, especially legacy tapes, to be able to start mapping, creating a data map to define a strategy to manage this content. And one of the recommendations is really focus on the high volume, high risk area of tape first, as well as email, if you haven't put an archive in place. And you're really solving a lot of the pain around information governance strategies. So really you can, and also the desktops really, again, really a lot of the recommendations there is really kind of let the users do less on the desktop from a storage point of view. Don't store on the desktop, store on central servers, and really think about the capability to create PSTs and eliminate that process. And again, like I mentioned, eliminate legacy tapes, and if you can clean up those two areas, you're solving a major pain point. So the playbook, and we have playbooks in place. We have partners that have playbooks, and it really depends, and this is something that we kind of customize with every customer, is really focus on audit, know what you have, build a data map, analyze the map, the data map, and determine sensitive content to be able to define a step-by-step action plan. Update your policies, really define the defensible playbook, and get legal to buy into it, or outside counsel or consultants to buy into it, and sign off on it. And defensibility is key. Getting a partner or legal advisor to really sign off on it and manage the risk is key. And then take action. Start purging what you don't need. Delete, delete, delete. And start with the high-risk data and work from there. And a lot of our companies we work with start small. I mean, start with small projects and build on that. And make sure you archive what you need for long-term retention, and you'll find that what you really need to run the business is far less than you think it is. And purging data, especially aged data, you'll find that users really have no need for it, won't even know that it's missing. Okay, so this is so we're wrapping up now. If you do have some questions, feel free to ask them. This is some of Index Engine's current customers, a few of them. You can see we do a lot of work in the government space and the corporate side. We have some service partners that help us with strategy and deployment of the technology. Also, I want to mention to everybody that we have a white paper. This is a new white paper that goes along with this this webinar. It talks about defensible deletion methodology. It goes into more detail than I went into today, and it's available. If you want to get a copy of it, send an email to me. You can send it to info@indexengines or to jim.mcgann@indexengines.com, or give us a call, and we'll shoot that right out to you as soon as we get your email in. So if you do have questions, feel free to ask any questions, and I'll ask Jan to help me out. She can maybe go through them, and I think we'll have time for just a couple.
Okay. The first question, Jim, is you mentioned a playbook. Do you have a playbook available that defines the process and methodology?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a structure of a playbook. I mean, usually what we do is we talk to customers in advance and understand their environment. So, you know, we're not a legal consulting company. We're a software company. So we do have a structure and an outline, but we do have partners, you know, law firms as well as other partners that do have playbooks, but we do have outlines and structures of it. So it really depends on the company. We're happy to share with you what we have. It's not something that's really a deliverable that we can send you via email, but it's something that as we meet with you and discuss your situation can really kind of customize it and help you understand the process. And it's really not a complicated process. It's really just one that ensures defensibility and ensures that you've taken a reasonable effort to manage your content in the right way.
Okay. Another question is, how long is a typical retention period for production email?
Well, that really depends on the company. I mean, we have companies that have you know, have weeks versus months and so on. So, I mean, I think a lot of retention periods have been defined because people are just afraid of the email and have a difficult time managing it. So I think as you integrate indexing as part of your email environment, the retention periods really kind of more sync up with what the users need in terms of, rather than, you know, what legal is just worried about. So, you know, it really depends on the business, and I think, you know, it's typically an average number of weeks, you know, short number of months or so on.
We have time for one more?
Yep, one more.
Okay. Why should we touch our tapes? We have not produced data from tapes for any legal purpose.
Yeah, we have a lot of customers in that situation. So, you know, if they've used the burden argument successfully, companies have not touched tape and then really haven't produced content. But we've had companies that have had that strategy for years and have gone into the courts and have been forced to do so because the courts are really becoming educated. Judges, opposing counsel are becoming educated and knowing that that content exists. So in fact, we have one customer that's really fighting a significant battle. It's a significant lawsuit and being forced to produce data from tape, where they argued that tape was not archives, it was just disaster recovery backups. And the judge was, well, if they're just for disaster recovery, why'd you keep them? And, you know, they're being forced to produce that content. So I think the climate's changed. There's lots of case law that shows that the climate's changed. So if you have not touched tapes in the past, you will need to in the future, and it's better to get going earlier rather than later, because even with technology such as index engines, it's going to take some time to get through that content. So again, we're happy to talk to you about some of the projects and what it would take to really address that, the liability of that content. So again, I think we need to wrap up here. I thank you for your time. Again, if you would like a copy of this paper, happy to send it to you. Send an email to info@indexengines.com or to jim.mcgann, and we'll shoot it out to you today. Thank you all for your time. Hope you found this informative, and we look forward to speaking with you.